Okay, hello. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. Let's go ahead and get us started on Instagram as well. Happy Wednesday. Hello, Instagram. Welcome. The gang's all here. Today, we are talking about father wounds. I have not talked about father wounds specifically in a very long time. I usually talk mostly about mother wounds. I usually talk mostly, actually, let me put the comment here because I know on Instagram y'all can't see what we're talking about fathers who hold on, bear with me. About fathers who abandon us. That's what we're talking about today, y'all. And let me pin this comment. There we go. Boom. Um, Thanks for the hearts. So, yeah, I haven't talked about father wounds specifically. I usually talk about mother wounds. Of course, I talk about woundings that happen in our interpersonal relationship, whether or not it's with a lover or a friend or the people around us. But today's topic comes from a comment that I got on YouTube. So many of you know I'm not really in the comments. That's something that I think I want to try to work on changing, just depending on how my capacity gets better. But I saw this comment that came across my desk, so to speak, that said, Sheena, can you do a topic on absentee fathers who invalidate you to avoid owning up to not doing their part and making the kids seem like they are selfish because they have needs that the father doesn't want to take care of? I know that's long, but it's an experience of myself and others. And so, absolutely, this is absolutely a really common experience for those of us who struggle with love addiction, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, having the men in our lives who are supposed to protect us and be there for us not be available, and then dealing with the emotional fallout of that, the rejection of it, the impact of the abandonment, learning how to take care of yourself, the difficulty trusting other people. And so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. So that is something that you want to hear about. Please drop some hearts in the chat so that I know that I'm talking to the right people. And while you are doing that, if this is something that you want to hear about, my name is Sheena Lachey. I'm the founder of Black Girls Heal. And what I do is I help women heal from the symptoms of love addiction, love avoidance, love deprivation, and the trauma that causes it to make way for healthy love in their life. I was a therapist by trade for over a decade, for over 12 years, and I transitioned into coaching and helping women find solutions to these problems because I have been that woman. I'm still on my healing journey. If you ever meet a healer that's like, I figured it out and I'm perfect, and so bow down to me, be wary. What's most important is that you find people that you know that are living what they teach, and that are able to create change. And many of y'all, the way that I do that is via my podcast, via my coaching program called the Recovery School. And so I've coached hundreds of women via the Recovery School. I have therapized thousands of women, and I have helped many more than that via the podcast, which many of y'all are parts of. And so I like to go live when I can to do these topics to support y'all in going deeper and like that every day. So let me say something real quick though. Um, I typically, like I said, I don't always go into comments, so I really don't want people to, if you send a comment or if you send a DM and it doesn't get seen by me, I just, because I know many of us struggle with abandonment issues and struggle with asking for help and reaching out, and to not get an answer can feel very triggering. It can make you feel like my question wasn't good enough, or someone else is better than me, or you're not likable. It'll hit all of those parts. I want you to know that that is not the case. That is not the case. It could just be that I am not in the DMs. And also, I have other avenues that I use to help people. So, like, for example, next month in June, I'm going to be having that coaching call I'm talking about. I'm going to be having a town hall, which everyone's going to be invited. Recovery school students get in for free, but anyone can come and ask your questions, the things that you've been wanting to get coached on and supported with. That link is not available yet because I haven't posted it, but I just know that that's going to happen in maybe the first couple of weeks of June. So just know that there are other avenues that I use to help people and support y'all. So, um, You can leave a comment, you can leave a DM, and just know that it is received with love by me, my team. If no one is able to immediately respond to you, just know that this is a safe space for that. Okay. So, St. Louis Socialite says, you helped me leave a toxic relationship where I was told I had no value and was losing weight. And now I'm now the happiest I've ever been, and I laugh all day, every day, and attract fun, happy people. Yes, yes, y'all. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so happy that I've been able to support you via all the things that I already mentioned. So congrats, and you did the work for it. So I hope that you're celebrating yourself. So let's talk about this topic. The topic again, y'all, is about fathers who abandon us. And when I was thinking about talking about this, I had to kind of figure out what is the direction. So those of you who've worked with me as students before, you know that I can hear your story, but I don't immediately give you feedback and response unless you ask me a question. And the reason I do that is because you can tell me a story and you can be thinking that you need help in one area, and I have feedback for something else. And then if I give you feedback for this, it can make you insecure about something that wasn't even an insecurity, you know? And then also there's a big there's a common habit that many of us who are the fixers in our lives, those of us who could struggle with codependency, that could struggle with people pleasing, that could struggle with parentification, that whenever a friend or loved one or someone is in front of you that's in pain, you have to fix them. You have to give them a solution. You don't know how to just sit back and be. You don't know how to just coexist with someone. You have to, and that leads into other relationships where you're really attracted to people who are broken, and you can't ever just be present with them. So it's really important for us to learn how to not rush into trying to tell people what to do and how to fix their lives, but to actually wait for an invitation. And if they don't ask for an invitation or they don't give it to you, then to say, well, how can I best support you with this? Because sometimes all someone wants you to do is just to listen to them vent. Sometimes they do want feedback and advice. And especially if it's a situation that they keep going back to, if you give feedback and advice when they didn't ask for it, it's very likely that they are going to go back to it, afterwards, because they didn't ask you for all that. You think you know what they want and what they need, but if they're not ready to actually put into action, you are going to feel frustrated with them because you inserted yourself in a place that you weren't invited to come. Um, and also, it gives you clarity on what they want. So, this person, I'm going to read the comment again. She said, Sheena, can you do a topic on absentee fathers who invalidate you to avoid owning up to not doing their part and making the kids seem like they are selfish because they have needs that the father doesn't want to take care of? I know that that's long, but that's my experience. So she doesn't have a question there, but it made me think about the types of men who do this and the different categories that they could be. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the different types of men that I see that do this to their children, in hopes that maybe if you can name it and label it, it can demystify it for you, and it can make you feel like, oh, yeah, that sounds like my dad, or that sounds like the father or male figure in my life. Um, that sounds familiar. And then you can take it and you can run with it and you can Google it, or you can excuse me, bring it to your therapy office with your therapist. If you don't have a therapist, you can start to look for one. Or if you're one of my coaching students, we can talk about it in the community, and I can support you through what's coming up for you. So here's the first category of men who I see do this: that they are absentee, and whenever you confront them with what you need, they make it seem like you're selfish and like you are ungrateful. That category is very clearly narcissists. People who struggle with narcissistic personality disorder, and find it really hard for them to take accountability, or impossible. So here's the thing about NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. It is a mental illness. It is a mental illness. I'm going to say that again. It's a mental illness. Why am I repeating that? Sometimes when it comes to narcissism, and because someone who is narcissistic looks very high functioning, and they look very capable and clear. And they may be even able to talk about emotions and talk about how you hurt their feelings and give a fake apology here and there. They may even be really charismatic. Some narcissists are even over emotional and they feel like the world is against them and they're a victim and everything. But because you can see qualities in them that you see in everybody else, you think that if I just talk to you with logic and with sense, and if I try to be fair in the way that I communicate with you, and I try to express with you, I get my script together with my therapist or with my friends or my loved ones, and I come to you and I tell you with an open heart, and I'm open to feedback, but I'm also going to own my part because I've been working on my boundaries. You think that if you come prepared enough, that one day someone who has narcissistic personality disorder is going to hear your point of view and be like, you know what, you're right, or you have a point, or I can see why you would say that. And that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because with narcissistic personality disorder being a mental illness, it warps the way that they see the world in reality. They literally cannot comprehend what you are saying because it's getting filtered through the self protection mechanisms that they have to not feel the impact of what you're saying. For someone who is a narcissist, they're always right and the problems are outside of them. The goal is to always win, to be in control, to be the saint. Sometimes it's to be the martyr. Sometimes the someone who's a narcissist is like very grandiose and arrogant and like wants to like clearly wants to dominate you and win. And sometimes what a narcissist will do is they will out victim you. If they feel like you're trying to make it seem like you have been hurt by them, then they're going to say, well, what about all these things that I've done? And what about all this? And what about all this? And they will pull things that don't even exist. They will gaslight you. You will, again, going back to the script and going back to like you being very prepared to like explain your case, they will take something so simple and so innocuous or something so clear as day, something so black and white, and turn it around and tell you that it's purple. They will, if you say, you know, when I was 5 years old and you didn't come to my music recital because, you know, Aunt Kathy, um, I don't know, you didn't come to my music recital, they're going to say, you didn't have a music recital when you were 5. Your music recital was when you were 6. And they will take it and like hammer down the age and wear you down to deflect from the topic, right? Let's say you're able to somehow get past that. And by the way, someone who is a narcissist is better at manipulating than you. I meet a lot of people who sometimes in their desire to defend themselves and not have someone take away their power and their voice, want to get into an arguing match and want to get into a defense match and say, I'm never going to let someone like talk down to me and take my power away. And so you want to fight back with a narcissist. What a narcissist wants is your reaction. So for you, you're like, I'm going to win because I'm going to lay down these points and I'm going to make my case. And what they want to do is see you squirm. They want to see you get emotionally out of control. They want to see that whatever they say is hurting you. So the more you talk and the more you spin, the more you're actually giving into what they want. Does that make sense, y'all? Does that make sense? So when it comes to you pleading your case with a narcissist, you can get trapped on these details because remember, their goal is to win and to avoid responsibility. Or they can take what you're saying and they can like project it and spin it around to being about them. So your feelings were hurt when you were 5 years old when they didn't come to your recital. When usually when you're struggling, when you have a relationship with a narcissist, there's like multiple different examples of abandonment and ways they didn't show up for you and um, ways that they neglected you, right? Um, but I'm just picking one. And so they may say something to the effect of, well, you know, my feelings were hurt when uh, I ask you to do something, you don't do it. And they will like make it all about their emotions. So WFS says, me and my sis have the same dad, but I don't come around because he's not honest with himself. My mom struggled hard to take care of us. My sister believes in not bringing up the truth, but letting it die. So, um, here's a question for you. Because I'm talking about narcissism, but I'm gonna talk about the other example too. There were two examples of different men who do this, so I'm going to talk about both of them. Um, I'm going to ask you this. What is it that you want? You and your sister have the same dad, and you don't come around because he's not honest with himself. And your mom struggled hard to take care of y'all. I'm assuming that you don't come, when you say you don't come around, that means your mom and your dad are still together, and you avoid going over to mom and dad's house because it's emotionally stressful and hurtful for you. Your dad is always playing the victim. You're trying to talk, this is a story I'm making up. You try to talk to him about how you feel, or because narcissists don't change. If your father is a narcissist, he is still saying and doing things and playing the victim actively. Like, this didn't happen 10 years ago. This is still currently happening towards your mom, towards your sister, towards you. And so you avoid going because it's all the things I already said. So if that is your truth, what is it that you want? What is it that you want? Because sometimes the other reason, whenever I'm coaching people, I I make them tell me what their question is because we can have this learned. This may not be the right word, y'all, but it's the word I'm going to use today. This learned helplessness, where we feel all this pain and we feel all this distress, and we want to tell it to other people and kind of have them figure out, well, what is it that I need? So here it is, and you kind of like dump it. And so, okay, well, this is your pain, and I can validate it, and I can hold space for it. I can tell you it makes sense, and I can tell you that you deserve to feel the way that you need to feel, and all those things are true. And now what? What is it that you want? And many of us, especially if we grow up in narcissistic or emotionally abusive settings, we've never had someone listen to us and ask us what we want. We've had people talk to us and tell us what we should want. We've had people gaslight us whenever we give, like, talk about a little bit of a crumb of what we may want, right? And so we learn how to settle. We may want this, but we've learned through experience that people are only going to give us like a little corner of it, right? So we have trained ourselves that either I don't say what I want at all because it's not going to happen, it's not going to make sense, it's too big, I'm asking for too much, so I'm not going to ask for anything at all, or whatever it is that's in my head, I'm gonna over filter it, and I'm gonna say, okay, well, this is what I want, but that's not gonna happen. So maybe I can get this, and then, well, no, that's not gonna happen. Then we'll over filter, and then we'll go here, and then, oh no, and then you're watering it down to like this little morsel of a crumb, and even then you don't expect it to happen, right? Does that make sense? Does anybody else relate to ever doing that before? Um, I see that you're writing part of it, so I'm gonna let you finish it. So when it comes to narcissistic fathers, it is your best bet with narcissistic fathers to recognize the mental disorder for what it is. And with that comes some grieving. Grieving someone who is still alive. Grieving someone who is fully present in front of you, who has an operating brain and lungs and everything else, and will have a full conversation about everything else that matters. It involves you grieving that person, but what you're actually grieving is the fantasy or the hope that you were striving for. Many of us keep going back to these conversations. We keep going back to these attempts to connect with these people because we're holding out hope that if I keep trying, or if I keep trying to use a different tool or different tactic, that maybe one day is going to get through. And so that's what makes you keep having the motivation to keep on that path. And so once you actually have to accept that that's not possible, that that's not going to happen, there's sadness that comes with that, there's true mourning that comes with that, there's grief that comes with that, there's anger that comes with that. And the anger is, but I deserve to be loved. Like, why is this even something that I even have to grieve in the first place? You're my father. You're supposed to love me and protect me and want the best for me. You're supposed to want good for me. You're supposed to. You're a fully grown person. You've lived life much longer than I have. Like you are supposed to be at a place where you can see what you're doing to me, right? And and to have that and that be a very legitimate need and be something that you deserve and to not be so close and be so far from it. There's sadness that comes with that. There's anger that comes with that, right? So let me know if that makes sense, y'all. Um, WFS says, my mom and dad were never married. I don't come around him and his family events, etc. are fake. I just want him to acknowledge. Coming around is like acting like everything is normal and he's a great and present dad, but as a child, he made it very clear, don't ask me for nothing. But only came around when we had a stepdad. I just want him to acknowledge to himself that he's not that guy that he tries to present. That's it. Okay, so what's that going to give you? If he were to acknowledge that he's not that guy, what would that give you? What does that mean for you? Um, yeah, what would that resolve something for you? And that's an honest question. I'm honestly asking you, what would that give you? Okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to talk about the second type of man. And I'm sure there are multiple other examples, especially for other healers who are watching this. So feel free to comment as you watch the replay for what connects to you or what stands out to you. But we're talking about fathers who may emotionally abandon us. I already talked about narcissists, and narcissists do it because of the mental illness of narcissism. Um, and before I move on to the second part, real quick, the other thing about parents who are narcissists, sometimes they slip under the cracks because there's even though there's epigenetics and things that can lead us towards being more susceptible towards different mental illnesses and things like that and different trauma patterns, um, babies, at least to the research that I know of, again, please correct me if there's something that's come out and I'm wrong or I learned different in my training, I learned the wrong thing. But babies that come out of the womb, they do not come out of the womb with narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is part of the legacy of abuse. So every person that is a narcissist that I've ever treated or that I have been in a relationship with anyone that I've ever treated, they all have a very significant trauma history. They all have either their parents were sadists, narcissists themselves, psychopaths, extremely avoidant, extremely abandoning. And so the narcissism was created as a defense mechanism, but it goes very deep. Like narcissists do not change unless they are prompted to, especially like in legal proceedings, like unless they're like court mandated or for some reason they feel like they're the problem, they need to change, then they'll go to therapy. But a narcissist will go to therapy once with you just to prove that you're wrong. And if you get a therapist that actually spots that they're a narcissist, all of a sudden they're busy. That therapist will know what they're talking about. They're racist. They don't like men. They don't like women. Like they have some kind of excuse to not go to therapy. Or they go to therapy once or twice to showboat and then just to get you off their back. Sorry for the law people outside, just to get you off their back, and then they stop going. But unless you ask, you're not going to know. So what happens is they slip under the radar, and we think, well, my parent isn't a narcissist. They've just gone through a whole lot of things in their life. My grandma did this, my grandpa did that. This was the abuse that they went through. So they're not a narcissist, but they just have some unresolved trauma. And two things can be true. It can be true that they have unresolved trauma, and it can also be true that for them, this is not everybody, but for them, their unresolved trauma has manifested as narcissism. Okay? Unfinished Bride says true, says I'm on the right path. Great. Don't stop in a minute. I'm going to keep going. Okay? Um, WFS says it just means he would have to acknowledge to himself he felt this as a father and he tries to project to others and stop making me look bad to his family. So here's something, and because you asked the question, I'm going to assume that you're open for feedback. Because you're the person who asked the original question, I'm going to assume that you're open for feedback. Okay? When I ask you what you want and what's it going to do for you, your response is that it will do something for him. And the focus is on him. And so you're living your life, and I'm saying this with kindness and grace and empathy as someone who also has narcissists in her family and someone who has had to work through not being able to change and help people. And not even like because I'm trying to be selfish or I'm trying to be right, but because this is crazy. Like, don't you see like the chaos that's happening kind of thing? But when I ask you what you want for you, it goes to him. And it's really hard for people who have a narcissist in their midst, because what narcissism does is it sucks everybody in to where the focus is on them. They're the moon and everybody else is a satellite. They're the sun or this planet and everybody else is a satellite around them. So everyone's emotions are based on what he, she, or them does. So whether or not they're raging or whether or not they're going within, whether or not they're showboating and grandiose, there is their world and everybody else is reacting around it. So to heal from narcissistic abuse, it's about you learning how to let go and let someone do their own thing and understand that that has nothing to do with you. Their brokenness, their illness, their pride, their arrogance, their disorder, that's for them to figure out and that's for them to work on. What is it that you want? What is it that's going to make you happy? What are the places inside of you that feel empty and alone and broken, right? And and can you tap into that? Can you tap into the inner little girl or little inner little person? Because I don't know your gender. Can you tap into that inner little part of yourself that is feeling hurt and forgotten right now? And instead of you needing for that person or this person or someone outside of you to acknowledge that for you, can you acknowledge it for yourself? One of the things about love addiction that takes something that is so beautiful about love and relationships as a healthy need is love addiction will magnify the human need for someone to see you and to hold space for you. It is not a sign of brokenness for someone to validate you and for someone to say your feelings make sense and for someone to like say to hold your hand and say, I'm sorry, or to take accountability. Those are all signs of a healthy relationship. But what happens with love addiction is we find one person or a fantasy of a person or a relationship and we make it so until this person actually acknowledges me, until this person actually makes it right, I can't move on. Like, yeah, I can give it to myself, but it doesn't feel as good. It doesn't feel as tangible until someone else gives me something outside of me that I needed, right? And so love addiction and healing from it feels crappy because it's like people are telling you, well, just love yourself and all this other stuff. And you're like, well, that's not fun, or that's what I've been doing and it's not working. And like it doesn't feel like it's hitting the issue, but I promise you that it is, because that once you accept that your father has his own path that he has to walk, and one he can go it's possible that he will go his whole life never being able to look and see what's happened. Can you surrender that? Can you let go of that? Can you move on? Can you build your own life that's built on what you want? You're already saying you're staying away from the house because it's too crazy. Well, what about the life that you have in front of you right now? Does it bring you joy? Does it bring you happiness? Are you excited to open your eyes in the morning? Do you have friendships and lovers and hobbies and things that make you feel fulfilled in ways that your family wasn't able to give to you? And if not, that is the place to start. But the way that you start there is not to repress, and I'm saying this not just for you, but for anybody who's listening. It's not for you to repress and act like, okay, well, my dad is sick and he has his own thing, and my whole family are enablers, because that's the other part. Like the narcissist has all these people who help them stay narcissistic. That's why they stay in the family system. Everybody is like, okay, shh, be quiet, don't say this, or you know how he is or whatever else, and they play the game, and you're the one who's woke, and you're like, fuck that shit, I'm not doing that. And you're trying to wake everybody else up, but everybody is comfortable keeping this game going, right? So you see what it is, and you're like, y'all gonna have to figure that out. That's a game that I do not want to play. I love y'all. I want us to be close, but that's not on the docket for me, right? So you leave that, and once you leave that, realizing that in this next chapter of my life, I don't want the sickness. So I'm accepting that they are sick and that I can't take people with me who aren't ready to go. So then what do I want? What am I creating? That's that next step for you. Okay? Let me know if that makes sense. Ashley says 100% that fits. Awesome. Are narcissists aware of their behavior? They are not in the ways that we want them to be. So aware the way we want a narcissist to be aware of their behavior is that you're causing all this chaos and things are on fire. And don't you want your life to not be on fire? Don't you want people around you to love you? Like you're making things harder. And what they see is they are experts in moving people around and getting what they want, so they feel satisfied. They feel satisfied in the things that they say, the things that they don't say. They feel satisfied in the withholding and living in that manipulation. The life is a game for them. They learned early on that life is a game, and they're going to win. No one, no one is, no one's going to beat them. No one's going to trump. Okay. My dad remarried, and to me, remarried and to me abandoned my mom, and now she's in a nursing home and I just don't feel complete. There's grief. Again, y'all, when it comes to people who are narcissists or people who are emotionally unavailable, there's a grief work that we have to do around what could have been and what should have been. Honestly, it's not even what could have been, it's like what you deserved, what your mom deserved, and there's real grief work that you have to do around that. Okay, so let me move on to the second type because I do have an appointment I have to get to. So the second type of person that I see tends to do this in relationships with their children. The second type of father is the one that's kind of been on the radar in popular culture right now for different reasons. They don't actually talk about these type of men when it comes to parenthood, more when it comes to romantic partnerships, but it shows up there. So these are men who are, I'm going to give a whole lot of words, but then I'm going to say the actual buzzword that I want to use. Um, so men who may struggle with low self-esteem and feeling like victims, men who may have been emasculated growing up, and so they don't really own their leadership and don't really own their masculinity, even if they're tall, 6 foot with beards and everything. They may be emotionally stunted and act like children and feel very entitled because they have felt victimized by the world, by women, by people who don't understand them. They feel like everything should be fair. And they feel like people should see them for who they are and not for what's underneath. And those types of qualities and the low self-esteem and not feeling strong enough leads to them projecting that victimhood everywhere else, and not taking ownership for themselves and not taking ownership for their mistakes and needing other people to take care of them, to validate them because they don't know how to do it themselves. So the buzzwords that are currently in popular culture are words like men with a lot of feminine energy. Some people call them dusties. Some people call them brokies. Someone call them what else do they call men who struggle with this? But the way that this shows up is that they can be in households where there's a lot of learned incompetence. So they are very passive while the mother or other people in the home are the ones who are the main parents. And meanwhile, the children are part of the collateral damage. So the wife is being emotionally neglected, or the girlfriend or whoever is being emotionally neglected, taken advantage of, um, unloved and neglected, right? And also, she is in charge of being parents for all the kids and showing up at the things and making all the food and being the emotional confidant. And the dad is just there. right? And so sometimes what I will hear people say when it comes to these type of men who are their fathers is that the fathers will say something to the effect of, well, I was here, what you mean? Like, I'm here, what do you like, what else do you want from me? But they're here and not involved. They don't really talk with their kids, they don't really talk with their wives, they don't have any quality time together, not they're not instilling lessons and values and education into you. When I was learning about, there's one person who teaches about love addiction. Her name is Pia Melody, and she has a theory. She teaches a theory on how to heal love addiction. And one of the things that she talks about is how, there are different domains of self, what does she call it? Different domains of care that you're supposed to be nurtured in growing up, right? And it's not just emotional care, it's not just mental care. I want to say there's like 12 of them. And one that kind of blew my mind that I never thought about is education. So, not just that your parents take you to school, but do they actually have conversations with you that teach you how to make decisions in the world, that teach you about values, that teach you how to own integrity, that teach you how to tie your shoes, or do they just say, well, someone else will figure it out, or they'll take care of it themselves, or they just hope by osmosis. Again, I was talking about it before, the example of the other parent, being more the main primary caregiver in all these ways. They let the other person take care of it, but they don't build a relationship like that. This is going to be a better description than the word that's in my mind, but like a mentor relationship. Like, do they mentor you on how to life, right? Or are they absent and they say, well, the fact that I'm in this house is enough, right? And so that's a way for them to emotionally abandon you. So going back to the original question, if you go to them and you say, try to tell them what it is that you need, they've already felt put upon by the world their whole life. They've already felt that no one understands them. And chances are they've had your mom or the other parent, what to them, bitching at them, complaining at them, telling them how they're not doing enough for a long time, and they don't want to hear it from you. For sure not you, not their child. When the fact that they stayed here is for you, and really they stayed because they couldn't get better. They felt like they couldn't get better. Otherwise, if they actually had the self-esteem to know what they were worth, they would have left, and have a relationship that actually filled them up. But they don't know how to do that, right? And so, with those type of parents, it is very easy for us to recreate those cycles as adults, especially as women. If we were trained to kind of like co-parent as children, we became parentified. If we were really good at like fixing the problems and like being the other parent's co-anchor, then it's very easy for us to get into relationships with people who have that type of learned incompetence too. Because the people who have those types of learned incompetence, they don't usually start off, and they're not as obvious as, well, you know what, I've given up on life and I don't really believe in myself. They don't present that way. They present as people, and y'all can see my stye. That's what I've been wearing glasses the last several days because the stye won't go away. It won't go away. If y'all have any style recommendations on how to make this sucker go down, I would really appreciate it so I can wear my contacts again. Um, but anyways, they don't present that way. They present as people who have a whole lot of like dreams and ambition. They may have tried to start a business and it didn't work out. They may have tried to start a certification, or they had a job and then they had to quit it because people weren't respecting them, but they don't actually build. They have dreams of building, they have plans to build, and may even have their toe out starting to build, but nothing ever lands. And so, and usually they're very good at talking about their emotions, right? Um, they're very tapped into how the world is not fair for them. So they can talk about that, right? And they can recognize your sadness, and they can recognize your trauma, and they can like talk with you and like hold space and cry with you and say, man, that sucks and that happened to me and all that. So you think that you have a nice person who's emotionally available, but what you have is someone who is over, there are those of us who are, our emotions are cut off because of trauma. We got to learn how to turn those back on. Or actually, we're repressing them. They're always there, but they're repressed. And so we got to learn how to turn those back on. And some of us, our trauma manifests as we overly identify with the pain. And that's what keeps us stuck. We have to learn some skills, and we have to learn the balance between holding my emotions and validating my emotions and still being able to move on, to make sense of it, to not live in the victimhood and to not live in the avoidance of I don't need anybody or anything, right? So we find these partners and we think, okay, well, I have a person with a great heart. Like, if anything, I got a deal. Like, they're cute, like, they're loving, they're emotionally available, they got dreams. Like, you may start to like build like this idea of like, man, like they're about to create something awesome and I'm going to be the one who is by their side. Like, it's like the ultimate crack for those of us who are fixers, for those of us who, again, either highly parentified or people pleasers or whatever. It is like, fuck yeah, got them, done. I'm going to stick beside them, right? Until you realize that that learned helplessness is always going to stay there until they work on it. And and they've been playing you. And whether or not they're aware they're playing you is a whole different story. It's a whole different thing. Some people are aware, some people are not. Um, but you come to see it in the relationship, right? And so whether or not you're a partner or whether or not you're a child, you're a victim to their low self-esteem. Okay. I missed a question here on Instagram. So someone said sassy. So here's the thing again, with a man who has a lot of feminine energy, and I know what you meant, but when people say that, that doesn't mean that's not code for someone, being on the down low or bisexual or gay. It is, when we talk about feminine energy, everybody, no matter their gender, male, female, trans, um, non-binary, whatever it may be, everybody has masculine, feminine energy, and it existed before the church. It existed like across the world, across different cultures and everything. And so I really hate that, there are some communities that have taken it and exploited it, and there are some people who teach it that teach it in a way that's so demeaning. But it's really talking about being able to be balanced. The way I water it down is it talks about being able to be in balance between your action and your flow, right? And everybody needs to learn how to have balance between your action and your flow. If I live my life 100% of the time in action, I am in fight or flight. I do not know how to rest. My body is going to crumble between stress, between disorders in my body, between not being able to sleep, between gritting my teeth, between anxiety that comes out of nowhere. You cannot be in action all the time. It is unhealthy. It is unhealthy to feel like I always have to defend myself all the time. It is unhealthy for you to feel like there's always something you have to critique and make perfect all of the time, right? This side, it is unhealthy for you to be always driven by your emotions and not able to find any kind of balance. It is unhealthy for you to only seek pleasure 100% of the time, because what that can translate into is the neglect. Like, if I'm always seeing pleasure despite the consequences, then that means, in the extremes, y'all, is I'm not paying bills, I'm not going to work, I'm going to use whatever substances I need because it feels good. I'm going to use people, I'm going to manipulate them, I'm going to say whatever I need to say because I deserve, right? Because I'm the one who deserves all the attention. So fuck whatever happens to other people and fuck how other people feel about it. I am entitled to everything. And so there needs to be a balance between the two, right? And so if I meet someone who has a lot of feminine energy, too much, and it's not balanced, it leans into that entitlement. It leans into, I exist, so you need to take care of me, and I don't need to take care of you. Like, I'm the prize. You're lucky I'm here, and I deserve just because, right? And there's nothing in it. There's like no mirroring. There's nothing reciprocal for you. Okay. Let me know if that makes sense. I know that's really different than how most people talk about masculine and feminine energy, but that's one of the ways that I have negotiated in my mind. Can you attract the second type of man who is your partner if you have a father who's like the narcissist? Yes, because you have learned how to abandon yourself. You have learned how to take care of other people. To have a parent or a lover or a family member or someone who's a narcissist, for you to survive and not be kicked out the house, you have learned how to acquiesce and to give it. You have to, right? And so it's familiar to you. And it's familiar for you to neglect your needs in some capacity. Even if you are loud and proud in some other areas, you learned along the way to water down what's important to you. So you meet somebody else who also doesn't care about what you need. They care about what they need and what makes them comfortable. And as long as you're taking care of them and being their ride or die and being available for them, everything is good. But once you start actually putting your foot to the fire about what you want and about them taking the lead, here's how you know. Um, Here's a good way to test this out. If you're in a relationship with anyone, if you're someone who dates men, and if you're in a relationship with a man and you're feeling like some of this is like really familiar that you've been going through, and you are like, and I'm getting tired. I'm tired of making all the decisions. I'm tired of having to be the strong one. I'm tired of having to be patient. I'm tired of whatever. Go to them and tell them what you want and tell them what you need and say, this is how I want our relationship to be. I know that in some other ways we have had it more 50-50, which is another trigger word. I know because of current conversations, but more in that, you know, uh, in attempts to be equal, we focus a lot on your emotions, but I'm feeling really tired right now. And I'm feeling like I need the focus. I know you say you're going to work on it and that you need time and everything, but at this point, I need the focus to be on me and what I need. Otherwise, I don't think that this is going to work. And see what they say. And then once you see what they say, you got to follow through with it. You have to actually know that you deserve what you're asking for, y'all. You have to not only know it, but you need to believe it. What happens is we get really, Ashley said, wow, yeah, we get to this place where we're like, I deserve this. And then we go to our partners or go to whoever it is, and we're like, I deserve this. You don't keep your mouth shut. You actually say, I deserve this. And you expect them to fall into place, and they may get pushback or they may get promises, but it doesn't actually work. But then we stay. So the win, yes, it's a baby step for you to actually use your voice, but the win is actually you moving around to a person, to a relationship, to a place where you're actually valued and you actually get what you want. And you don't sacrifice your heart and your life and your time and your body to someone who doesn't have space for you, who doesn't know how to have space for you. Okay? Sarah says, me being bullied was something I dealt with alone or little understanding. Yeah, bullying happens often in families. I'm not sure if you meant like in your peer relationships, but for sure there. And y'all are giving me methods for my sty. Thank you. I want to wear my contacts again. So try neem oil, and someone over here said a warm compress. So I will try those, and hopefully my eye is feeling a little bit better. I might even risk some contacts tomorrow if it's not too swollen, but we'll see. We will see. But yeah, so that is my answer to the question that was posed, and I hope that y'all found this helpful. Thanks for sharing in the chat. I know that this is midday, so I know a lot of people were at work, but we still have really great conversation. Um, Again, I will be having a town hall in June, so if there's anything that you really want to dig deep into and get coached in, you are free to, you'll be able to join us there. Recovery School students will be able to get in for free. And if these are the things that you want to unlearn and work through, the impact of the abandonment trauma, how's that showing up in your relationships, the meanings that you're attached to it, how to find this happiness within yourself, how to actually let go of these bonds. I know we have the no contact process that does the trauma bonds, but the Recovery School is about fully unlearning that and immersing yourself in that and changing your life. And so that would be the next space for you. And that's where I can help you do so. So you can learn about that by going to therecoveryschool.com. But that is it for now. So my mother's a narcissist. My dad was the epitome of feminine energy. Do you have any tips for healing, or should I seek regarding attachment? So the Recovery School is the resource that I would suggest. You can rewatch. I don't know if you just joined, but I talked a lot about narcissism in today's live, and about what that looks like and about where it comes from and also how it impacts you. So you can rewatch this as well. But if you're talking about like how to heal from it and like go in more depth than what I shared today, this program was a 6-month program when I first started it, because of how in depth that we go into it. So that would be the next step and resource that I would give for you. So that is it for now, y'all. Y'all have a great afternoon, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.